Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode here in our Max Colonization series, where today we're going to get our grubby little hands on some oil. There's a few steps that we're going to have to do before we're able to get into there, starting off with the fact that we're going to need some suits, because much of this biome is a little bit too hot for Callie and friends. And in order to get suits, I'm going to need some clean oxygen. I could say put a gas pump right here and then filter it just to make sure there is no polluted oxygen. But we've been talking about making a mini spam anyways, so I figured we'll do that today as well. And there's also a couple of things that we need to be doing both on this planetoid and our home planetoid. First, I'm not happy with the cooling potential that we've got going. Yeah, the sulfur's coming out at 34 degrees, but that's because we've pushed it out to once every 60 seconds. And by doing that means, well, we're not getting a lot of sulfur at a time. But additionally, one thing I forgot, which I'm going to blame it on the fact that I recorded for way too long last week, there's no cooling for the auto sweeper or the conveyor loader. You can see our auto sweeper is already up to 96 degrees. There's no environment in here, nor are we using any conduction panels. So I'm going to have to break in there to fix it anyways. But I figured since we were in there, I might as well start running that sulfur on rails. The 20 kilo packets will end up cooling a little bit quicker if I run them on rails before they end up going to the final chilling process here at this metal tile. And then maybe I can reduce the amount of time between the time when the conveyor chute opens. So I've put a deodorizer here with the intent of cleaning out the polluted oxygen here, so when I do open this, it'll just be clean oxygen that goes in there. It wouldn't make a big difference with the thermals, I just would rather the tamer look a little cleaner, and, well, oxygen looks cleaner than polluted oxygen. And then on our home planetoid, we have a couple of issues. First, Llama in the intergalactic Neptune that I forgot to rename before I launched it is down to about 4.5 cycles worth of food. They've managed to give us a little over 1,900 databanks, so not too shabby, but we still have about 1,300 kilos worth of plastic that I'd rather turn into databanks before I land the rocket. But because I am notoriously forgetful and get squirreled and sidetracked in this game, I have set up an anti-echo forgetting device, and that's by using an automated notifier and a timer sensor set on cycles. We have the green duration set at 0.01 and the red duration to 5. And what that means is at the end of 5 cycles, the timer sensor is going to send out a green signal. That green signal will go over to the automated notifier. That will end up pushing me a notification to check on the rocket. Then over here on our other rocket, we are about ready to launch it. I don't know how the name got changed to Spacefarer Module, but we'll go ahead and change that now. And we'll go with the ESS Explorer. I know, very original. But if we look inside, you can see I've already got it loaded up with the 20 kilos worth of pemmican, which gives us about 52,000 calories. We have all our oxylites, so now all we have to do is look for another pilot. And while I was in the process of doing this a little earlier, I noticed not everybody had the +5 to piloting being given to them from the Somnium synthesizer, with the idea being I want as high of a piloting skill as possible to pilot our exploration rocket. Well, when I go down to the Somnium synthesizer, you can see, well, it only has 2 dream journals. So I'm starting to think that because of how much downtime I'm giving the duplicates, and the fact that there's only 6 of them, it's not producing enough dream journals. So I can do one of 2 things here. 1, I could reduce their downtime down to 2 slots, or 2, I could just print another sleeper. And I think I'm going to go for that option. The reason being is because, well, we did this whole setup with the idea of them being able to hand out balloons, serenading other dupes, and that sort of thing, so I might as well just find another sleeper instead of shortening their schedule again. Another problem I noticed is, well, it's already 48 degrees in here. And part of that's because, well, I brought in too much of that warm water that we noticed from the last episode. 48's going to be okay for now. But when I was looking at the next water coming in, I was like, this is still a little too warm. And it's because, well, I ended up overflowing it from the spam. Well, remember your spam sits pretty hot. So while the water was coming in at 26, when we were refilling this entire pipe, once it sits for a little while, it starts warming back up. So I've snipped it off from the overflow and am now just bypassing it using a bridge instead. I think we'll also just drain a little bit of this now so I can get some cold water in. And while the dupes are doing that, let me find somebody. Is anybody a better pilot? Dave's at least got +1 point, but Dave's a mechatronics engineer, so I'd rather not use them. Not to mention that Dave doesn't have astronomy. We have Fallout Stan, Glenn Sullivan, and I suppose there are only 2 options as far as research dupes go. And Glenn has a science of 28, so I think this mission's going to end up going to Fallout Stan. They do have an 18 morale requirement though. Let's check the Intergalactic Neptune and see what kind of morale Llama is getting. A 26, so that's not too shabby. So I think we can send Fallout Stan as is. Let's make the first destination down here so we can get exploration on this unknown point of interest. We do have a range of 10 with the rocket. And then on the water, it's now back to 25 degrees. So let me snip it off there and snip it to drain this water. There we go. Now I can get rid of this. And right on time, Stan is ready. Unequip that suit. Oh, I did forget that I wanted to put a rover's module on this rocket. That way, if we ever do find another planetoid, we can just drop a rover while we're there. I do need to make it out of steel though. 1 second, Llama. We're just making some slight changes. Okay, so maybe the heat is going to be an issue. Because of the toasty surroundings, Stan is getting a minus 50% to stamina, a minus 5 to athletics, and 10% to stress. So here's what I'm going to do. Since it'd kind of be a pain in the tuchus to empty this through the out port, what I can do is have a dupe come in here and just start plumbing most of this water, which means I need to put all back on this. So Stan, can you come get your suit back on? We're going to delay launching for just a minute. Our rover's module is in, but you got to get a little bit closer to the rover's module in order to get rover in there. I wonder, can I reach if I put a ladder here? I'm assuming that this is the tile that they have to get to. Who's scalding? Stan, I told you to put your suit back on. Oh, Stan is not having a good day at all. Sopping wet, major eye irritation, popped eardrums, and oh yeah, they can't breathe out here either. This wouldn't have happened if you'd have just put your suit on like I told you. Thank you, buddy. No, now put your suit on. Good job, buddy. No, this ladder's still unreachable storage, so I will end up putting the ladder there. Here comes 270 to start draining some of this water, which is bringing in some nice cooler water. I'm just going to let them sit here and drain it for a little while until the temperature in the rocket drops down a little bit. And I think I'll also help this process by hitting an ice temperature shift plate in here, and then we'll mop up that water as well. While the dupes are working on that, I figured it's time to start tackling this sulfur geyser modification. So I'm going to open it up here. We've got plenty of nice oxygen right here, although there is a handful of little dirt. I'm just going to move it over to the side so it won't be an issue. Oh, I'm going to need a mechatronics engineer just to put in those rails, aren't I? Dave Hammer, please report to the teleporter transmitter. Dave Hammer to the teleporter transmitter. And now that we know that there's going to be an atmosphere in here, I think what we're going to do is end up picking up the sulfur and just sort of looping it around just like this. And then this is where it'll end up going up and out. So I can delete this rail here. Lots of beautiful oxygen in there. Another issue here is this automation setup. Thanks to some of the comments, they pointed out that yes, like the standard, our steam turbine is going to turn on if it gets too hot in here or if the battery tells it to, which is exactly what we want. Unfortunately, when it's too hot in here, it's also going to turn on the hydrogen generator, which is not what we want. And the only way to sort of fix this is by putting the steam turbine on its own battery, which is not convenient because, well, there's not a lot of room here unless I move the steam turbine over by one. There we go. That looks a little bit better. I've separated the automation. So now the steam turbine only runs when the battery says it needs it or when it's too hot inside the steam chamber. Of course, it would help if I actually put power to the battery. I just realized Dave can't really get in there because this is a 3-high drop. So I'm going to have to open this up. I didn't want to because there's a little bit of carbon dioxide. Oh, wait a minute. What if I deconstruct that so any carbon dioxide will sink first? We'll even give the carbon dioxide more room by mopping up some of this water. Oh, it's barely too big. Oh, here we go. Got it now. Now when we deconstruct this, no carbon dioxide should make it in there. Fingers crossed. We've brought the temperature in here back down to about 30 degrees. I made it a little bit quicker by putting in some radiant liquid pipes, which I can now recover. And once all that is done and somebody comes and picks up all of this water, we will get Stan on their way. Dave has finished the modifications to the rail system for the sulfur tamer. And this should be good enough. I'm going to sweep these last two pieces up, then we'll seal it back up. Now, before I set this timer sensor, let's figure out how much sulfur I need per cycle. And that way we can figure out what the maximum this timer sensor can be set at. Each Sweetle needs 20 kilos per cycle. I erased my notes already, but I know we're going 9, 9, and 8, which is 26. That's a total of 520 kilos worth of sulfur. Plus we have all these grub fruit plants that also require 10 kilos per cycle for another 80. So we have a total requirement of 600 kilos per cycle, which comes out to be 1 kilo per second. Every time the chute opens, 20 kilos comes out, so we need to open once every 20 seconds, regardless of how hot or cold it is. But notice this sulfur that is just sitting on these rails, it's already down to 35 degrees, and the reason why this is so effective is because it's much easier to cool a 20 kilo packet of sulfur than it is several tons. And if we check the progress, even with our conveyor chute opening a lot more often, the sulfur's coming out around 36 degrees. Much better. And we don't have to worry about the auto sweeper overheating. All right, Dave, it's time to send you home. Or maybe not. After your nap, whenever you're ready. It looks like somebody already picked up Dave's suit, so before they get a chance to head into the sauna, I'm just going to move them back in, and then they can figure out what they want to do. Time to crew up our rocket. We do have a rover standing by. We did make sure that we made rover's module out of steel as well. I also just got the notification to check on the other rocket, which worked out really well because they're down to 636 calories. Oh, you only have 510 more kilos worth of plastic. Of course, if memory serves me correctly, we loaded up a little bit too much anyways. I know you can finish. Come on, you've got this, buddy. Oh, it's also really hot in here as well. Looks like I'm gonna have to give this one the same treatment, even though it is gonna fill with some much cooler water. That's definitely not enough to counteract the 48 degrees that it is in here. So why don't we check back on Llama in one more cycle? And maybe by then we'll have all of the plastic used. Stan is all ready, so it is time to launch. Good luck, buddy. Explore those stars. Don't worry, I won't forget about you. Or better yet, I should probably set up another reminder. Well, here it is. We're out of calories, and we still have 340 kilos worth of plastic. But luckily, they still have a full tummy. So we're gonna push this even longer. We'll check on them again next cycle. Here's the other rocket. I can actually copy the settings here, but I need to be able to differentiate between the two rockets. So I will say check on ESS Explore. And you can see it's going to take 3.5 cycles to get over to this space. Probably another cycle to scan the area. So I will check on them in 4 cycles. I love mopping up multiple tons worth of water. It's not gimmicky at all. You just have to mop faster than what the water comes in at. I'm moving all this water because it's time to figure out where we're going to actually enter this biome. It would make sense if I could come down through here, because then it would be one continuous fire pole and ladder, which would be great, but then I couldn't get them in suits unless they went inside of their suits as soon as they left their camping cots. But I don't know if that's necessary, and it would really slow everything down. Dupes outside of suits are faster than dupes inside of suits. So I guess we're just going to go down, let's say, right through here. Now it's time to build our wonderful spawn, and I think I'm going to try something extremely compact. I'm going to use some cobalt here. Actually, should I make it out of steel just in case? No, I think I can keep it cool enough just using water. I'll put one electrolyzer in, a gas pump, and then a gas filter. There is our entire spawn right there. Of course, you can't really call it a spawn unless it's self-powered, and this is not going to be self-powered, so it's just an Power goes in, just like that. This circuit does have a lot on it, but it's very rare that everything is on at one time, so I don't mind doing this at all. And then we just need to insulate the whole thing in, sort of like this. And it's time to check on Llama again, who hasn't had anything to eat in the past cycle, but fear not, they still have 2,000 calories and 120 kilos worth of plastic. I'll check on you tomorrow, llama. Maybe by then you'll have all my data banks? The water in the spawn, I think we'll start off by just trying to use all the polluted water. We have a couple of buffer tanks here anyways, so we'll just go down through here, and then I'm going to circulate the water around to try to keep all of this machinery down to temps, and then right into the electrolyzer. Maybe I should radiate them? I only have about 98 kilos worth of iron, so I'm going to change one pipe to a radiated iron pipe. That should be enough to keep the whole thing cool, right? And you might be wondering, how am I going to keep all this oxygen cool? Well, we're not. At least for now. Because all this oxygen is only going into the suits, it doesn't matter how hot it is. Eventually, we're going to run out of polluted dirt, and so we'll have to switch over to using this oxygen instead of the sublimation station. And at that point, we might be able to do something with this anti-entropy thermal nullifier and some of the excess hydrogen. We are under another meteor shower here, and you see I had the bunker tiles. And unfortunately, when the bunker tiles get hit, the meteor actually does damage to the tiles beneath them. But the only reason I did this is because, well, I didn't want any of the thermals coming through. But where's all the debris? So I think for now, we'll just deconstruct these insulated tiles and not have to worry about it. Oh, there's some of the debris. 300 degrees. We are nearing the momentous occasion where llama will be able to stop working for a little bit. We only have 5 kilos worth of plastic left in the storage bin, and since I do not want the duplicates to refill it when we land, I will just eject it. And there we go. We have all of our data banks. We'll go ahead and allow you to land and get out of your hot box. I mean, it's only 49C inside the rocket, which I just did the conversion, and it equals 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Which, yeah, I guess is a little toasty. Sorry about that, buddy. We also need to make sure that llama puts their suit on before they land. There you go. Welcome home. The rocket also injects a little bit more heat into our sauna. Beautiful. Now inside the rocket, we can deconstruct the orbital data collection lab. We can deconstruct the storage bin, the auto sweeper. We'll end up retrofitting a little bit more on this rocket here in a little bit. We can also finally rename the rocket with yet another creative name, the ESS Colonizer. Wait a minute, does that say Colonizer? We can also disable the notifications, and the way I do that is just snipping it right here. Back over here on Reek Allen, we are finishing up the spawn, and yes, I do notice all the flopping Pacu. Don't worry, I'm gonna move them. We'll put them in this nice little pond right here. The great thing about the telescope inside the rocket is even when the rocket is flying through space, Stan can still do the telescoping. So before they even get to the destination, they're already revealing tiles 3 spaces away. Oh, we revealed a new planetoid, Wintriol. If you remember when we started this seed, I did make sure that all the planetoid seeds were enabled, and that definitely looks like the Frosty planetoid. Unfortunately, it looks like it's only 5 tiles away, so I will be able to drop a rover in there. So I will change the destination to right here, and then we'll drop rover off. We'll also let Stan reveal the rest of the spaces around here, and then we'll head home. Our mini oxygen machine is almost complete. The electrolyzer is already plugged in and running. I like our little cooling solution here too. We'll see how long this is good for. And remember, just because these other pipes are not radiant doesn't mean that they don't have some thermal conductivity. They do. A standard liquid pipe made out of sedimentary rock has a thermal conductivity of 2. Not great, but it's something. You know what? I forgot that we can now make liquid pipes out of ores. And it has a much better thermal conductivity. Yeah, let's try that. I don't think I've ever done this, at least since the change. Next up, I need to put in some gas pipes. The first gas pipe is going to go over to the gas filter, where we have it set on hydrogen. So the hydrogen's going to come out, and this is where it's going to get a little loopy. I'm going to try to make sure that the hydrogen is used in our main hydrogen spine. Unfortunately, you can see it's backed up pretty well. So what I have to do is provide some overflow. And I think that's going to look like this. At first, the hydrogen is going to go into this bridge and try to do a 50-50 split with this line. Remember, since this is such a small spawn, chances are it's not going to be a full packet of hydrogen that gets siphoned up anyways. So we'll have the pipe here and this pipe here that can also hold some hydrogen. but if it gets too full, it'll then bypass, and we are unfortunately just going to eject it into the vacuum of space. Not ideal, but I don't think it's going to be doing that too much because the majority of what's going to come out of here is going to be oxygen. Speaking of which, before I send this off to suits, we're going to send it to a high pressure gas vent because this has a lot of polluted oxygen. Once they finish all of that, we'll wait for them to sweep this out and then I'll seal it shut. The pod has seen it fit to give us another sleeper. This Ruby is a sticker bomber, which is one of the 3 overjoyed responses we've been picking up. Sticker bomber, the yodeler, and the balloon artist. So welcome to duplicate number 25, Screwy Girl. You may notice that I put the Z's in front, and that's once again thanks to the comments, who pointed out that in a lot of screens the dupe names are alphabetical. So if I name all the sleepy dupes with the Z's up front, well, they'll all be grouped together. And now with 7 duplicants all doing the sleeps, we should be able to boost up their downtime. I'm going to try 4 slots and see if that works. Why are none of the dupes getting the status bar other than Screwy Girl? Okay, that's better. I've snipped the water to the electrolyzer, and that way this pump can fully vacuum this area out, just so we can get rid of all the polluted oxygen. Now it's time to start thinking about suits. Here's the issue. There is once again no reed fiber or feather fiber on this planetoid. So it's one of those situations where anytime they need to go down here and work, they're going to be using up a suit, and eventually that suit's going to deteriorate and I'm going to have to repair it. I cannot wait until I get my grubby hands on some reed fiber. Now we have 824 feather fiber, so it's not a big deal. It's just a little bit of a pain in the tuchus. I'll just go 10 kilos of feather fiber. In addition to there, I'm going to send the fresh suits over so I don't have to worry about the refined metal. I'll also need the exosuit forge. We can put it right here. In fact, if I move it one closer, they'll get the well-lit buff from the mini pod. I guess I'm going to need to send more iron over there anyways. I realized I'm going to have to make the atmosuit docks, and I'm not making them out of steel. With all of our databanks accounted for, we can now start on the rest of the research. I've already finished Brackeen flow, and we're going to go straight into the petroleum engine. Speaking of engines, the ESS Explorer is in orbit of Windriol, so let's deploy our rovers module. Ooh, look how tiny this planetoid is. This would be a great place to break into, but rover cannot dig through the abyssalite, and I also have to take into account where I'm going to land the rocket one day. I suppose rover can go up and around, so we'll land rover right here. Welcome, buddy. Now, I've got a lot going on, but I suppose I can do a little bit with rover. Yeah, they've got this whole point of interest, shielded with abyssalite. Very sneaky. To tell you the truth, the only reason rover's even on this planetoid is to give us a little bit of exploration so we know what we're dealing with, and so that we can deconstruct the lander to get 400 kilos worth of steel. Then when a dupe lands here in their own lander, we deconstruct it, and then we have enough material to make a rocket platform. Now that I got a little bit of sedimentary rock, let's see how far we can go. If I just queue up dig commands, you can see that rover can't get through the granite here. It can get through that ice though. So we have found a way down. We'll just go through here. Oh, never mind. I just realized there's granite sitting in this tile as well. Okay, what if I go down through here and then through here? Now just get rover to be able to hop down there. And rover's not going to be able to dig the uranium, so I'm going to have to use a ladder there. And while I will not be able to get through the abyssalite, I can still explore all the way over here. That'll give us good visibility and continue to dig down. Look at this poor mammoth. Yeah, I would think you're miserable. I've also put in a single tile, and that way, when we do get to this atmosphere, it won't be vented to the vacuum of space, just in case we need a little bit of oxygen when we do land. Waste not, want not, and all. We'll come check on rover here in a little bit. And I suppose I can now send the ESS Explorer home. And while they won't enjoy the experience, we'll make sure that Stan is in their atmosuit so they don't get themselves into trouble when they get out of the rocket. And with that settled, we can check back here on Recallan, where we've got some feather fiber, some atmosuits, and some iron coming in, which means we have the materials we need for our atmosuits. We'll put 2 suits in there and an atmosuit checkpoint made out of iron. Here's our oxygen line. So we'll just come down and over, and then all it needs is power. This poor circuit. And then we'll just build a ladder going straight down. Oh, wait, full stop. There's a spore kid. Okay, so we'll only go down a little bit. I'll even put a fire pole. Wow, there's a lot of spore kids around here. I think we'll just stop right there, and that way I can make my way into the oil reservoir. All we have to do is tap it with the oil well. Now, the oil wells do not have an overheat temperature. Well, at least one that's reasonable. You can see this oil well doesn't overheat until 2000 degrees. So we'll be able to get in there directly. All I'll need to do now is provide it with some water. We'll use the same line going to the spam, and whammo blammo, soon we'll have some oil. Now, I'm not going to hook it up with water yet because I do not want this oil well to run, because there's some things that we're going to need to do to make sure that this water doesn't boil. Remember, the oil well is also going to put off natural gas, which we're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with as well. So we've got some construction that we need to do down here. It looks like our docks are ready. We're going to deliver our suits. And now our spam is filling them up with oxygen. And look at Callie in the suit for the first time. Well, at least on this planetoid. Here's what it looks like we're working with so far. And as you can see, where I'm putting the liquid lock for the oil well, more on that in a little bit. The ladder's kind of in the way, so I'm going to end up moving all of this one tile to the right. And then we'll have a nice little liquid lock, and I'll be able to break down what we're doing inside of here as well. I was hoping to be able to save all this oil here, which would have filled this liquid lock pretty nicely. Unfortunately, I dug up the wrong tiles and mistakes were made. But it's okay. We're just going to go down here, and I'm going to use a old-fashioned pitcher pump. As a matter of fact, it would be kind of nice to have a pitcher pump in here, wouldn't it? Let's move this over. We'll say 2 tiles. The liquid lock is finishing up, and it looks like we are about ready in here. The next step is to vacuum it out. We are going to use a steel gas pump because it's going to stay in here. Remember, when you provide water to an oil well, it produces a bunch of crude oil. Well, after some time, the oil well's back pressure has to be released. And when that happens, a bunch of natural gas ends up being ejected. We need to do something with that natural gas. Luckily for us, over on our home planetoid, we have a big, sexy, hot sauna. Not that we need the power, but, you know, I'd rather do it here than over on Recallan. Of course, then I'm going to have to worry about the pressure in here eventually. Yeah, either way, that's a future Echo problem. So to start off with, I'm just going to vacuum this whole thing out. We are going to use insulated tiles, so this is going to take our 2 poor dupes here quite some time. And it does not look like we're going to have enough igneous rock to do all that, so we will use sedimentary. And for now, I will just eject all this to the vacuum space. But in the future, we're going to be sending all that natural gas home through here. Why is the teleporter disabled? Oh, look at all the eggshells and meat ready to go over there. Okay, you come out, you go up. Oh my goodness, this whole time I had failed to activate this output over here on our home planetoid. Here it all comes now. No wonder the pemmican wasn't shooting up as fast as it was supposed to. You know, I keep adding more and more to this circuit. Eventually, it's just going to give up. And when it does, we're just going to add another hydrogen generator over here and another battery. In fact, maybe I should do that now. There we go. Now we've got a separate circuit for the sulfur tamer, the oxygen machine, the suits, and the oil setup, which I suppose I can stop filling that. And it looks like we're almost at a vacuum. It's being a little stubborn because some of it's trapped down here, but the game will soon delete this, so it's probably time to go ahead and put in our liquid pump. It will also need to be steel, and once again, we're going to need a lot of insulated pipes. Now, we could be doing the conversion to petroleum here on this planetoid, but there's not a lot of infrastructure here. There's not a lot of power, etc., etc., so I'd rather send the crude oil back to our home planetoid, and that's where we'll turn it into petroleum. Which means in addition to the natural gas being sent over there, and all of its piping, I'm also going to have to put in another pretty substantial insulated liquid pipe. Let's go over one. That works there. Little bridge action. And I suppose we're going up and over like this. Some well-placed bridges. And then over on the other side, we just have to figure out what we're going to do with it. For now, it's just going into a buffer tank. And oh my gosh, I did not realize how many liquid pipes we have on this colony already. This is going to be a pain getting this petroleum all the way up to our rocket silos. There we go. That will do for now. I mean, it could always be worse. The center corridor could look like our ventilation overlay. Like, what is going on here? At last, we finally have a pure vacuum in our oil well, which means I can switch this back over. this line is now going to be going straight up because the only gas that will appear in here now is going to be natural gas. While I'm thinking about it, let me put an Atmos sensor in here just so we can keep a little bit of gas in here so that there's an environment. But when the gas pump does take the natural gas, it's going to be going up through here, all the way up into the teleporter, where it's going to be coming out of here, going all the way up through a bunch of these gas pipes, hooking, still driving north towards the sauna, into a wonderful lum gas reservoir, where we will be collecting all the natural gas and then sending it inside of a pair of natural gas generators. Even though I really don't need power here. Remember, this room of hydrogen generators was sitting on 9055. The power plant above it is at 9060. So these hydrogen generators run first before these do. Well, in the last 5 cycles, they've ran 0%. They have triggered 1% this cycle though, and it's because we're providing so much power with all of these steam turbines, and since everything's getting an NG tune-up, well, it's a lot of power. So while yes, this will say 9050, I'm also going to need another way to trigger turning on the natural gas generators, and that's where the lum gas reservoir is going to come into play. All buffer tanks have an automation output that is almost identical to the smart battery, except I'm going to need it to send a green signal when the lum gas reservoir gets too full. So you can probably guess what's coming, and that's going to be a NOT gate. And then we're going to set the natural gas buffer tank to say something like 9085. And what this will do is, once it gets up to that high threshold of 90, it's going to send out a red signal, which we are going to turn into a green signal to turn on, which will cause all the natural gas to start being used out of the tank. Well, once it reaches the low threshold, it'll send out a green signal, which will flip to a red, so then the only thing that'll turn the natural gas generators on will be the smart battery. So that's the natural gas piping. We now also need another pipe to get rid of the carbon dioxide from the natural gas generators. And since we have so much background environment around here, we're kind of conveniently located to the left side, so let's put it here. I'll just take a normal gas vent, put it right here. We'll use obsidian just until we get clear of the rocket exhaust, and then I'll switch back over to, say, igneous rock, where we will connect it with the natural gas generators, where once again we'll be dodging neutronium. Okay, we've taken care of the carbon dioxide too. So all that really remains to be done to plug in the oil well. Water's coming down, goes into the oil well, and the oil well starts giving us a bunch of oil. And then our oil is being sent to our home planetoid. Now you may notice that I have this little block here, and this is for a very important reason. That oil, when it comes out, we want it to flow from right to left past the oil well to keep it relatively cool, because otherwise this water that is sitting inside of it will end up heating up to a point where it'll turn to steam. It's also the same reason why we've insulated the pipes going into the oil well. Now we are occasionally running out of power because we only have one hydrogen generator on this circuit, which is only producing 800 watts. Well, just these 3 pieces of equipment right here is 720. It's not very often, because as you can see, the hydrogen generator is winning now anyways, but I think this system is about done. I'm going to let it run for a few minutes so we can get at least one back pressure release, so we can double check what we're doing with all the natural gas. Otherwise, stuff like this will happen. Apparently our crude oil is not being sent back. Oh, we're still waiting for a couple more pipes. Let's go, Callie. Chop, chop. The last thing you'll need to do here is there's going to be a point where we don't want to make any more oil. Well, our oil well does have some automation. So when this line is all backed up, because for whatever reason over on our home planetoid, we don't need any more oil, this liquid pump is not going to be able to pump anymore, and the oil is going to start to rise. Well, we don't want this whole place to fill with oil. That's not to say that you can't have an oil well that's submerged, because you can. It's just not what we want to do in this use case. So I'm actually going to remove this ladder piece right here and put in a hydro sensor. We'll connect it to the oil well, and then we'll set it to say, hey, keep sending a green signal as long as there's below 500 kilos worth of crude oil in this tile here. And of course, this episode would not be complete if we didn't run into a problem. For some reason, we're out of calories. I think what's happening here is they're taking too long to grab the grub fruits. So I'm going to turn them on a priority 6. It looks like this plant is about done. Callie still has 2,000 calories. Mustang Cody has 2,000 calories, so I'm sure we're going to be fine. And now with them on a priority 6, maybe Mustang Cody will get to them a little bit quicker, so we're getting the true 2,000 calories per cycle. Here we go. Dinner is served. You may have also noticed there's 100 kilos worth of polluted dirt here, which means we're losing a little bit of grub fruit. You figured they'd eat it all before it spoils, except for the fact that this refrigerator has pollution exposure, which is causing the grub fruit to lose 30% freshness per cycle. In other words, in a little over 3 cycles, all the fresh grub fruit is gone. So I guess it's time for some more deodorizers. I'll put one on both the living levels, change these over to mesh tiles, and hopefully that will fix that problem, at least here in few. I also realized since I'm still backed up in this golden gas reservoir with hydrogen, and we're about to stifle this hydrogen vent because there's too much pressure in here, there's no reason for me not just to add another hydrogen generator to this circuit, and that way we won't get any brownouts on the industrial side of this colony. We finally have some back pressure being released, and look at all this beautiful natural gas. We'll set our Atmos sensor to above 100 grams, not below it. And apparently I need to update what I built the pitcher pump out of. And since I don't have any ceramic here, I'm just going to deconstruct it. Looks like I could have made this thing smaller after all. And there the natural gas goes over to our home planetoid. I'm going to call this a success. Now all we'll have to do is turn all this crude oil into petroleum. That way we can replace our steam engines into petroleum engines. But that's going to have to wait till our next episode because I'm pretty sure this one has gone on too long once again. As always, I'm looking forward to reading what you have to say about this episode in the comments below. And until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.